Korowai are cloaks rich with meaning, carrying whakapapa and tradition. Traditionally woven from harakeke or feathers, they're taonga or treasures that connect people to culture and ancestry. But what happens when they're reimagined through 3D printing? In this episode of Articulate, I'm joined by Whaea Nan Walden-Moeung, who's blending toy Māori and new technology to explore how tradition can be carried forward into the future. Thank you so much for coming in today, Whaea Nan. It's so nice to have you here, and welcome. I suppose a good place to start was korowai can mean really different things to different people. For some, they're handwoven from harakeke flax, and for others, more of a feathered cloak. How do you see more your 3D printed korowai sitting within that lineage?
Yeah, thank you. It's so lovely to be here. Ngā mihi nui kia koe. I think it's really important to honour our traditions and make sure that we are still learning and teaching the traditional aspects of weaving, rāranga, taniko, whatu, but also to push the realms of what it means to be an artist and be a Māori artist in Aotearoa in 2025. So for me, a korowai is a cloak that's something that somebody wears to honour them, for them to have some mana and wairua within that cloak put into them. So it doesn't really matter what it's made of, just as long as that honour or that shrouding of honour, of mana, of mauri, of spirit is put into that person through that process.
I also wanted to ask you when you revealed the 3D printed korowai to your own community and whānau, what the response was?
Most people were just blown away, absolutely blown away. They loved it, and they loved the push of the boundaries of creativity. There were some, however, who were steadfast in their opinion of what a korowai is. Some were very adamant, no, this is not a korowai. And I think it's really important to touch on what a korowai in a traditional academic, say if you were a museum curator or somebody that looked after taonga, you would see a korowai as something that's made from muka, which is the fibre of harakeke, and it has hukahuka black tags woven into it, and it's hand-woven. It's hand-stripped and hand-woven.
Could you take me back, Nan, to when you first learned how to use a 3D printer, and when did you first start thinking you could maybe use this as a tool for toy Māori?
I was at the Fab Lab, the fabricational laboratory at Massey University in Wellington, and we were doing the induction tour, and one of the technicians there had a piece of fabric in their hands that had 3D printed scales on them, and they were just playing around with it, and I looked at it, and my friend standing next to me, Kylie, said, "Oh, that looks like feathers." And so from that moment, I was so adamant that I was going to test that and trial that. And from there, it just exploded. I was able to take the whole year off, paid, so I could still pay my mortgage and feed my children. And I started studying and took the Fab Lab tour at the beginning of 2024. And so from there, every single day was a commitment of my time to exploring this 3D printed 3D printing feathers, and I was such a noob. There's so many much younger people than me there. They'd just finished their honours and they're doing their masters, and they were all so supportive. And so that journey was not just about me, but it was all about the people surrounding me and helping me through that journey. My husband, my children, my family, my in-laws who looked after my children, so all of those people, and then my study mates next to me who knew how to 3D model a feather in Fusion 360, which I wouldn't have a clue how to do. But they sat with me and they took that time, that patience for me to learn it. And I was able to model the feather, and then I was able to repeat the feather, and then I was able to print the feather. And that's just the journey that took me through my Masters of Design, my Masters of Māori Design.
I think also you created your own filament, a 3D printed filament for your korowai.
Yeah.
What was that process like? And I also wanted to ask why it was important for you to take that extra step.
I wanted to whakapapa to my materials. It's so important for me to know where my materials came from. I couldn't just order something off Amazon and be like, yep, that's cool, it looks great, I'm going to use that. How did that get there, and who made it? Where did it come from? It's so important for me to know that. And from a sustainability perspective, it's really important as well. So on the side of the box of the filament that I had was a name called Kiwifil. And I emailed Kiwifil, and the lady there, Eva and Bill are just amazing people. They told me to come and make some filament of my own. So I went up there and I was able to shred about 1,000 plastic bottles.
Wow.
That they had by the ton in these big, huge, sheep's wool bags. I was able to shred those and dry them. And they'd taken a straw making machine and engineered it into a filament making machine.
Cool.
And I was able to jump on that and use the pellets that I'd made from the recycled bottles to create my filament. And I made this ombre. The ombre was really important. The colours and the effect of the colours from a feather, which you can see is, if you have a feather and you look at it from different angles, it is going to look different. So that ombre effect was really important to me. So I stood at this machine and I fed these pellets in for about 6 hours. I stood there and fed in these little dye pellets, and I made 3 massive rolls of 3D printing filament that you use on what's called a big rep. So next door to the Fab Lab is a workshop, and in the workshop they have this big rep, and it's probably maybe half the size of this room. It's a 1 metre by 1 metre 3D printer, and I was able to use this filament to then print the feathers that I'd made on Fusion 360, and we had to experiment a lot with the fabric that we put it on. It needed to be strong enough to hold the feathers, but it needed to be like a tulle. It had a weave through it so that the plastic could then adhere to the print bed. Yeah, we had a few trials and errors. I may have broken the machine a couple of times. The technician got to know me very well, and so those are the people as well. That all those the technicians around me, the tutors around me, talking to me, and every time I walked in there, one of them would be like, "Oh, here she comes again," but everyone else like, "How's it going? What's it up to now?" And I was able to print 3 different 3D printed korowai using this technique, and those prints lasted 5 days. So you do a 3D print and it might take 3 hours. These prints were like 5 days long.
Our core question today, Nan, is what does it mean to carry tradition forward into the future without losing its essence? What's your response to that?
I think it comes back to teaching my students and knowing that once I engage a student in making a korowai, it just seems that their life gets a little bit better. They become a bit more understanding of who they are and where they come from and the success that they have in making. just and watching that process and knowing that process works is it's pretty phenomenal. And that's the essence of the korowai. So that when that korowai, so like anything, if you've got a green stone you can't buy one for yourself. And my mission has been to decolonise education spaces. So that was my whole master's, was using contemporary Māori art to decolonise education spaces. And every single korowai that I have made, or that a student has made, or that I've co-created with a student, has been gifted to a school. So these schools then get this korowai that they place on the shoulders of a person. When that person puts it on, they put their mana and their wairua and their mauri, their life breath, into the garment. And then when the garment is taken off, it holds on to that. And then when it's put onto somebody else, they can then have the mauri of that person passed on to them, but also putting their mauri into it. And it becomes a legacy of wairua, of mana, of mauri, and a positive physical representation of te ao Māori in an education space. So that is what the essence of it all is.
Beautiful. And to carry, to have that weight and to carry the that legacy of all the people who have worn this before you is also so special.
Yeah.
I wanted to pick up on something you said there, Nan, about decolonising education spaces and just more into what that looks like to you in practice.
There's a researcher named Dr. Anne Milne, and she was one of my design presidents for my master's. She has 7 steps to decolonising a school. Her first step is the physical space. So if you can walk into this physical space and know that you're in Aotearoa, many schools that I've worked in, you could walk into the space and it could be any school in England. But if you walk into Wellington East Girls College, you are greeted with te ao Māori. And part of that is the Māori art that I make, the Māori art that my students make, and my korowai. So every single school that I've worked at has a korowai that I have made and gifted to them before I've left, and they're used in so many different ways. So it's the decolonisation of education spaces specifically. I've just recently visited Kahurangi School and gifted them a korowai, and it was their first.
Oh, wow.
It was such a beautiful ceremony. The whole school was in the hall and they sang for me.
Oh.
And that was actually one of my old schools that I went to as a young...
Oh, no way.
Yeah, and 6-year-old me would have been looking up at me and going, yeah, that's cool.
Do you see your korowai, Nan, more as or as at all a bridge between traditional knowledge and new technology because of the materials and the process that has gone into them, creating them?
I'd like that to be the case. Definitely, if my 3D printed korowai creates more interest in the korowai itself, then people will understand it a little bit more. I know that the more traditional people who make korowai in a very traditional way, using muka and hand weaving, would like that tradition kept. And there are some who are very steadfast in that opinion. And I would like really very much for them to know that a long time ago I was called out for cultural appropriation of korowai, and so from there I taught myself how to weave. And knowing how to weave, knowing rāranga and taneko and whatu, knowing how to do those more traditional techniques has led me to teaching them teaching them to students and teaching them to other teachers so that those teachers can then take that knowledge to their students. So it's not just about, I'm the bridge. I'm absolutely the bridge between Māori and Pākehā as well, because I have heritage in both. So,
just picking up on that, Nan, I wanted to ask, you touched on there, I think there's sometimes a bit of fear that technology could dilute tradition. How do you navigate that tension in your creative process?
That's a really good question. I'm really blessed to have the example of Te Rau Karamu Marae at Massey University. It is just beautiful. And it also used, instead of hand carving, it used a CNC router. So using that as a design precedent and knowing how beautiful it is and knowing that mana whenua, Te Atiawa and Taranaki had a hand in making that, it kind of gives me permission to move forward. But yeah, that tension is always going to be there, from tamoko being done with a pen, with a tattoo gun, rather than in a traditional way, or women speaking on the marae. That's still very contentious, and at the moment not something I'll push on, but having the support of mana whenua behind me, Te Atiawa especially, is really it's reassuring to know that I make mistakes and that's okay, but I do have a lady named Whaea Pukitapu who helps me a lot through Wellington East Girls College, and advises me on mana whenua, and I'm really grateful to have that. But I think there's always going to be tension, especially as we move forward as a colonised race. Our art forms weren't allowed to evolve, so being in survival mode, you can't make art. If you're focused on trying to find food or get out of poverty, then making art seems a little bit of a luxury. But here I am, and I'm able to say that my parents got us out of poverty, and I'm at a point of self-actualization where I can make art and I can push those boundaries a little bit at a time.
I wondered what you hope someone feels when they put on one of your korowai.
I hope that they feel like a superhero. Like being Māori is actually my superpower. And when I put on a korowai, I feel enveloped with kindness and goodness and love. So that aroha, that whanaungatanga that comes through when you're wearing it just makes you feel like you belong. And I think that's, in some cases, that's all humans need, is to feel like they belong, to know who they are, where they came from, and to belong.
What's next for you, Whaea Nan, and for the journey of 3D printed korowai?
Well, I've just applied to Massey University to complete my PhD.
Cool.
So the PhD will look more at decolonising spaces. It's not just education spaces, it's not just schools. I've had student work and my own work now gifted to libraries. So the Kilbini Library in Wellington here has contemporary tuku panels that me and my students made, and Massey University Library has a piece of weaving that I've done, and I'm about to engage with Dion Knox, who is the Wellington City Council East Library manager. He's taking me around to some different libraries, Miramar, Newtown, Johnsonville, and we'll get a feeling for where the 3D printed korowai may sit really well, and decolonising spaces, walking into a place in New Zealand and knowing that Aotearoa lives here, smashing down all of those barriers that seem to be in our way using art as my political statement.
I think finally you've brought in an object from your life to share with us today. Can you tell us what the object is and why you brought it in today?
Sure. So this is one of my 3D printed patus.
Wow, beautiful.
And wrapped around it is one of my first ever pieces of muka that I extracted myself.
Beautiful.
So it's so difficult, but I keep trying that. So I 3D printed the korowai, but I still had all this filament left and I needed to use it in some way. And I started 3D printing. I downloaded from web-based 3D printable files a thing called a pikorua. Pikorua is the infinity swirl, and it creates a connection. It means connection. And I printed I must have printed about 1,000 of those, and I just give them away to people now. And this one here is actually 2 pieces. There's a flat surface so that they're printed on the big rep. And I needed to use up the filament that I had. So I printed maybe about 80 of these from the filament that I had left. And it wasn't any really thing about printing patu. It was just I've got to use up this filament. But now you can see, if you look into the patu, you can see the glitter that I put in there. You can also see the different blues that are coming through.
It's stunning.
And one of my lovely friends from university, Dr. Zene Craig, her partner passed away, and he was actually the lab tech for the Fab Lab, and he had this blue that he was going to take back to Kiwifil. So I took it back for him. And when I arrived, Eva didn't know that he had passed away. So we labelled the filament Daniel. We called it Daniel because that was his name. And we sprinkled it Daniel through every now and then through. And so Daniel is in here.
In there.
And it's a way of being able to close the loop on polylactic acid, the plastic. And it's also a way to whakapapa to your materials, but it's also a way to connect with people.
Thank you so much for coming in today, Nan.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this kōrero. Yeah.
Thank you.
Kia ora. Whaea Nan shows us how innovation and tradition don't have to be at odds. They can walk side by side. If you want to watch more episodes like this, visit our YouTube channel at thepost-nz or explore our archive at thepost.co.nz/articulate. I'm André and this was Articulate. I'll see you next time.